All right, this is chapter 10, section 1, part 2, starting on page 297 and Rome's early kings. So we just covered where Rome is located in the world and how the city of Rome was founded with Aeneas and Romulus and Remus. So now we're going to start talking about their first government, so the very first rulers of Rome. So that's where we're going to pick up. So we're going to start with Rome's early kings right here, right? So Rome's early kings. According to the ancient historians, Romulus was the first king of Rome, taking the throne in 573 BC. Modern historians believe that Rome could have been founded within 50 years before or after that date. Rome records list 7 kings who ruled the city. Not all of them were Roman. Rome's last 3 kings were Etruscan, members of a people who lived north of Rome. So this word here is Etruscans. So the last 3 were Etruscan kings, and they were from a different group of people. They were from people who lived just north of the city of Rome. The Etruscans, who had been influenced by the Greek colonies of Italy, lived in Italy before Rome was founded. The Etruscan kings made great contributions to Roman society. They built huge temples and Rome's first sewer. Many historians think that the Romans learned their alphabet and their numbers from the Etruscans. The last Roman king was said to have been a cruel man who may have had many people killed, including his own advisors. Finally, a group of nobles rose up against him. According to tradition, he was overthrown in 509 BC. The nobles who no longer wanted kings created a new government. So the first people who ruled Rome were kings. The first king was Romulus. There were Italian kings and there were Etruscan kings. And this was fine, and the people didn't have a problem being ruled by a monarchy until the very last king, who was not a nice person. He was very mean, very cruel, killed a lot of people. And so the people rose up and revolted and replaced him with a new government starting in 509 BC. Okay? So why did the early Romans want to get rid of their monarchy? Because he wasn't a good person. He was very mean and cruel. So the early republic. This answers question 3. So there are 2 parts to question 3. This helps answer part of question 3, 3A. The early republic. The government Romans created in 509 BC was a republic. In a republic, people elect leaders to govern them. Each year, the Romans elected officials to rule the city. These officials had many powers, but only stayed in power for 1 year. This system was supposed to keep any one person from becoming too powerful in the government. But Rome was not a democracy. The city's elected officials nearly all came from a small group of wealthy and powerful men. These wealthy and powerful Romans held all the power, and the other people had little to no say on how the republic was run. So the republic was an oligarchy. We had a group of people who were elected to make decisions and rules. So the government that they replaced the monarchy with was a republic. Challenges from the outside. Shortly after the Romans recreated the republic, they found themselves at war. For about 50 years, the Romans were at war with other people in the region. For the most part, the Romans won these wars, but they lost several battles, and the wars destroyed many lives and much property. During particularly difficult wars, the Romans chose a dictator, or rulers with almost absolute power, to lead the city. To keep them from abusing their power, dictators could only stay in power for 6 months. When that time was over, the dictator gave up his power. That sounds a lot like the Greek tyrant. So in Greece, they elected a tyrant to rule and make the decisions so that they had absolute power. But the difference between a Roman dictator and a Greek tyrant is that a Roman dictator only got to rule for 6 months. If the war was still going on or the problem was still there, they would elect a new dictator to take over. In Greece, they would keep the same tyrant until the conflict was resolved. Right? One of Rome's most famous dictators was Cincinnatus, who gained power in 458 BC. Although he was a farmer, the Romans chose him to defend the city against the powerful enemies that defeated the larger Roman army. Cincinnatus quickly defeated the city's enemies. Immediately, he resigned or he stopped as dictator and returned to his farm, long before his 6 months term had run out. The victory by Cincinnatus did not end Rome's trouble. Rome continued to fight its neighbors off and on for many years. I'd like to take a moment and read the biography of Cincinnatus and see if you can make a connection. Cincinnatus was the most famous dictator from the early Roman Republic. Because he wasn't eager to hold on to his power, the Romans considered Cincinnatus to be an ideal leader. They admired his abilities and his loyalty to the Republic. The early citizens of the United States admired the same qualities in their leaders. In fact, some people called George Washington the American Cincinnatus when he refused to run for a third term as president. The people in the state of Ohio also honored Cincinnatus by naming one of their major cities, Cincinnati, after him. I wonder, has anyone been to Cincinnati? If you have, leave a note in the comments of the video or send me an email if you have been to Cincinnati, because it's named after Cincinnatus. Challenges with Rome. This is going to help you answer question 3B. Challenges with Rome. Early enemies weren't the only challenge facing Rome. Within the city, Roman society was divided into two groups. Many of Rome's plebeians, or common people, were calling for changes in the government. They wanted more of a say on how the city was run. Rome was run by powerful nobles called patricians. Only patricians could be elected to office, so they held all the political power. The plebeians were peasants, craftspeople, traders, and other workers. Some of these plebeians, especially traders, were as rich as patricians. Even though the plebeians outnumbered the patricians, they could not take part in the government. In 494 BC, the plebeians formed a council and elected their own officials, an act that frightened many patricians. They feared that Rome would fall apart if the two groups couldn't cooperate. The patricians decided it was time to change the government. Contrast. How were patricians and plebeians different? That's a really good question. Well, if we look at the chart here, it helps explain how they were different. Patricians were wealthy, powerful citizens, while plebeians were the common people. The jobs that the patricians had is they were nobles. They got to make the decisions, whereas the plebeians actually did all of the work. They were the peasants, the craftspeople, the traders, and other workers. The patricians were a small minority of the group of people. There weren't very many of them. The plebeians were the majority. There were lots of them. The patricians once controlled all aspects of the government. They were in charge of everything. The plebeians slowly gained the right to participate in government. It took many, many generations, but they eventually got some power. After 218 BC, they were not allowed to participate in trade or commerce. So at some point in time, patricians were no longer allowed to be traders. And the plebeians were the only Romans who could be traders, so many of them became wealthy. So when we say traders, we mean the people that would go on the boats and they would sail to other places and they would go and get the things and get all the goods and the cloth and the stone and the meat and all the things that the Romans needed, and they would bring it back. That's what we mean by traders. Last paragraph, summary and preview. In this section, you read about the location and founding of Rome, its early rule by kings, and the creation of the city's republican government. In the next section, you'll learn more about that government, its strengths and weaknesses, how it worked, and how it changed over time. So I hope that this helps you a little bit with the reading of the textbook pages. and answering the section assessment questions. So your assignment is to answer all of question 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you're going to do that in the attached document on the assignment in Google Classroom. So I just typed it out for you. So I typed the question that the textbook had, and then you can type your answer where it says answer. So you can type in the box like you're used to doing from Greece. So please make sure you go all the way through the last question, question number 4. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment somewhere or an email, and I'll speak with you soon. Bye-bye.